Number, we're gonna die, trapped SEAL team begged, until the grass phantom sniper appeared. Christmas snow fell thick as a white curtain over the Afghan valley, as SEAL Team Omega walked into an ambush in the narrow mountain pass. Bullets ricocheted off stone, red flares lit the sky, and through the static-filled radio came desperate screams. We're gonna die. We're all gonna die. No retreat, no air support, all hope fading until the ground in a patch of grass on the mountainside shifted ever so slightly. A figure covered in dry leaves, perfectly camouflaged, slowly emerged. They didn't know yet. The grass phantom sniper had arrived. Captain Sarah Morrison checked her watch. 2,147 hours, December 24th. The temperature had dropped to -30°C, and snow fell harder than any meteorological report had predicted. Shahadra Pass stretched before them like a jagged wound cutting through the Hindu Kush mountains. "Command, Omega-6, Morrison spoke into her headset. "We're 2 clicks from the target building. Weather's worse than briefed. Visibility down to 50 meters. Static crackled back. Copy Omega-6. Intel confirms the package is inside. Taliban force estimated at 12 hostiles. Extract and evac by 0200. The package. That's what they called Dr. Lawrence Bennett, a CIA contractor specializing in signals intelligence. He'd been captured 72 hours ago while investigating a new communications network the Taliban had established. Command wanted him back before he talked or before they killed him. Sergeant Daniel Foster moved up beside Morrison, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Ma'am, this doesn't feel right. The drone lost signal 20 minutes ago. That's the 3rd technical failure today." "I know," Morrison replied, scanning the ridgeline through her night vision. Everything glowed green and grainy. "But we can't leave Bennett out here. Not on Christmas Eve." Lieutenant Christopher Hayes, their communications specialist, forced a laugh. "Hell, Captain, we finish this quick. Maybe we get back in time for turkey at the mess hall." The team, 8 operators in total, moved in a tactical column through the deepening snow. Each person carried 60 pounds of gear: rifles, ammunition, medical supplies, breaching charges. Their boots crunched softly despite their training. The snow was too thick to move silently. Corporal Brandon Sullivan, the youngest at 23, kept checking his sectors nervously. This was his first combat deployment. The others noticed but said nothing. Everyone remembered their first mission. "Omega-6, this is Overwatch," a voice crackled. "We're getting unusual heat signatures on the ridge above you. Multiple sources. Recommend holding position." Morrison raised her fist. The team froze. "Overwatch, can you confirm count and location?" More static. Then nothing. "Overwatch, do you copy?" Silence. Foster moved beside her again. "Communications are degrading. The storm's interfering with everything." Morrison weighed her options. They were 30 minutes from the target. Turning back meant leaving Bennett for another day, and another day might mean a propaganda video showing his execution. Moving forward meant walking into unknown danger. "We continue," Morrison decided, "but tight formation, weapons ready." The valley narrowed as they advanced. Steep walls rose on both sides, channeling them into a natural corridor barely 50 meters wide. The kind of terrain every soldier dreaded. The kind of terrain that turned into a killing zone. Hayes checked his radio again. "Ma'am, I can't raise anyone. Command, air support, even our backup team, nothing." "Keep trying," Morrison ordered, though a cold certainty was settling into her gut. This wasn't weather interference. This was jamming. Professional jamming. They were still 400 meters from the target building when Sullivan spoke up. "Captain, I see movement. 3 o'clock, high." Morrison swung her rifle toward the ridge. For a moment, nothing. Then, the night exploded in light. Red flares arced into the sky from both sides of the valley, transforming the snowstorm into a crimson nightmare. The beautiful Christmas snowfall became a hellish curtain illuminated by hostile fire. "Contact! Contact right!" The first burst of machine gun fire came from the eastern ridge, a heavy dishke that sounded like a jackhammer tearing through metal. Rounds kicked up snow and shattered rock all around them. "Find cover!" Morrison shouted, but there was nowhere to go. They were in the open, exposed, with enemy positions on high ground. An RPG screamed overhead, impacting 50 meters behind them. The shockwave threw Sullivan to the ground. "We're bracketed!" Foster yelled. "Multiple positions, at least 3 machine gun nests." Morrison's mind raced through tactical options. They couldn't assault uphill through fire. They couldn't retreat. More guns had opened up behind them, cutting off escape. They couldn't call for artillery or air support because communications were dead. They were trapped. Omega-6 to any station. We are under heavy fire in Shadara Pass. Request immediate fire support. We have wounded. Only static answered. Another RPG hit closer this time. Shrapnel sang through the air. Specialist Marcus Thompson grabbed his leg and screamed. "Medic!" someone shouted. The team pressed into whatever cover they could find, rocks, shallow depressions, even the bodies of dead trees. But it wasn't enough. The enemy had prepared this ambush carefully. Every angle was covered. Every piece of cover was pre-registered for fire. Morrison's tactical mind analyzed their situation with cold precision. The enemy had chosen a textbook L-shaped ambush position. The killing zone was approximately 80 meters long, with interlocking fields of fire from at least 3 machine gun positions. The RPG teams were positioned to cover any attempt at retreat or advance. Whoever had planned this understood small unit tactics better than most insurgent commanders she'd encountered. She realized with absolute clarity they had been lured into this deliberately. Dr. Bennett was bait. The communications failures weren't weather. The intel had been compromised from the start. They were meant to die here. The thought crystallized in her mind with terrible certainty. Someone had fed them information designed to get them into this valley at this specific time. The weather report had been manipulated to make them think they'd have better visibility. The timeline had been accelerated to rush their planning. Even the Christmas Eve timing was calculated. Fewer assets available, reduced operational support, skeleton crews at command centers. It was brilliant and brutal. The Taliban had chosen their battlefield perfectly. Morrison could see it now with terrible clarity how every aspect of the terrain worked against them. The valley walls funneled them into a narrow kill zone. The snow on the ground eliminated concealment. The storm prevented air support. Even the Christmas timing was deliberate, knowing American forces would be undermanned during the holiday. "Count off," Morrison ordered between bursts of gunfire. 1. Okay. 2. Okay. 3. Hit but mobile. 4. Okay. All 8 still alive, but that could change in seconds. The volume of fire was increasing. Morrison could hear at least 4 separate machine gun positions now, plus multiple rifles. She estimated 30 to 40 enemy fighters, maybe more. Foster Lowe crawled to Morrison's position behind a boulder barely large enough to cover them both. "Ma'am, we need to move. They're going to flank us from the north." "Where do you suggest we move to, Sergeant?" Morrison's voice was bitter. "We're in a box. They've got the high ground on 3 sides. An explosion ripped through their position. Dirt and snow rained down." When Morrison looked up, she saw Lieutenant Hayes clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. "Shrapnel," Hayes gasped. I'm okay. He wasn't okay. None of them were okay. Sullivan, the young corporal, was returning fire with his M4, but Morrison could see his hands shaking. The kid was on the edge of panic. Another RPG screamed in. This one hit the rock directly in front of Specialist Gregory Warren. The blast wave lifted him off his feet and slammed him into the ground. He didn't get up. "Warren is down! Warren is down!" Specialist Andrew Peterson crawled to Warren, checking for a pulse. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he looked back and shook his head. They'd lost one. The reality of their situation crashed over Morrison like a physical weight. 1 dead, 2 wounded, surrounded, outgunned, no support coming. They had maybe 10 minutes before the enemy coordinated a final assault to overrun their position. "Ma'am!" Foster shouted over the gunfire. "We need to do something!" But what? What could they do? Morrison's training screamed at her to act, to lead, to find a solution. But every tactical principle she'd ever learned told her the same thing. They were in an impossible position. Sullivan's voice cracked over the radio. "We're gonna die. We're all gonna die." "Shut up," Morrison snapped, but she understood the panic. She felt it herself, clawing at the edges of her control. Then something changed. The machine gun on the eastern ridge, the one that had been pouring fire into their position for the last 3 minutes, suddenly went silent. Morrison's tactical brain immediately registered the absence. One threat eliminated. But how? A malfunction? Unlikely in the middle of an ambush. Equipment failure? These were well-maintained weapons, not improvised junk. Before she could process it, another sound reached her ears. A single, sharp crack from somewhere up the mountain. Not close, but distinct. The sound of a high-powered rifle. The distinctive report of a precision weapon, not an assault rifle. The sound carried differently through the mountain air, a deeper, more purposeful crack that spoke of careful aim and lethal intent. Morrison had heard enough sniper fire in her career to recognize what this was, Someone was taking precision shots from an elevated position, but who? There were no friendly units in this area. Their backup team was 40 kilometers away. The nearest American outpost was even further. A second machine gun position went quiet. Same sequence, the sudden cessation of fire, followed seconds later by that distant crack. "What the hell?" Foster breathed beside her, his eyes scanning the mountainside for any sign of their mysterious ally. Morrison keyed her radio, cycling through multiple frequencies. "All stations, cease fire. Someone else is engaging the enemy positions." The SEAL team stopped shooting, conserving ammunition, watching in amazement as one by one, the enemy guns fell silent. Each time, preceded by that same distant crack, Morrison counted the shots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each shot meant another enemy gunner eliminated. The precision was inhuman. No missed shots, no wasted ammunition. Every trigger pull resulted in a kill. "Unknown friendly," Morrison transmitted on all tactical frequencies. "This is SEAL Team Omega. Identify yourself." Static. Then a voice. Female. Calm. Almost emotionless. "Omega 6, this is Phantom. Stay in cover. I'm clearing your northern approach. You'll have a window in approximately 4 minutes to move to the target building." Morrison and Foster exchanged glances. "Who the hell is Phantom?" Foster whispered. "I don't know, but she's saving our lives," Morrison replied. She keyed the radio again. "Phantom, we have 1 Kia and 2 wounded. Can you provide sustained overwatch?" "Affirmative. I count 36 hostiles in your area, 19 down. I'm working on the rest. When I give the word, move fast to the building, at heading 090. You'll have cover." The precision in that voice was unnerving. 19 down? Morrison hadn't even seen where most of the enemy was positioned. Another shot. Another enemy gun went silent. "Ma'am," Hayes said, his wounded arm now bandaged by Peterson. "Whoever this is, she's taking out targets I can't even see with our optics." Morrison watched the hillside where the shots seemed to be originating from. Nothing. No muzzle flash, no movement. Whoever Phantom was, she had concealment down to an art form. 3 more shots in rapid succession. Then, Phantom's voice came back. "Omega 6, you're clear. Move now. Heading 090, 100 meters to the building. Go." "You heard her. Foster, take point. Peterson, help carry Warren's body. Sullivan, Hayes, covering positions. Move, move, move." The team burst from cover, running through snow that seemed determined to slow them down. Morrison expected the remaining Taliban fighters to cut them down, but shot after shot from their mysterious guardian kept enemy heads down. They made it to the building, a mud brick structure that had probably been a local elder's home before the war, and breached the door. Inside, they found Dr. Bennett tied to a chair, beaten but alive. "Who are you people?" Bennett gasped. "Your ride home," Morrison said, cutting his bonds. "Hayes, see if you can get any communications working from inside this structure." "On it, ma'am." Outside, the shooting had stopped. An eerie silence fell over the valley, broken only by the wind and falling snow. Morrison keyed her radio. "Phantom, we've secured the package. What's your status?" "All immediate threats neutralized. But you've got a problem. The Taliban will send reinforcements. You need extraction in the next 20 minutes. "Our communications are jammed," Morrison explained. "I know. I'm tracking the jamming source. It's mobile, 300 meters northwest of your position. Sending you coordinates now." Morrison's radio beeped with incoming data. "You want us to assault the jamming vehicle? It's that or wait here until 50 more Taliban show up. Your choice, Captain." Morrison looked at her team. 1 dead, 2 wounded, exhausted, low on ammunition. But Phantom was right. They had to move. "Foster, take Sullivan and Peterson. Hit that vehicle. Hayes and I will secure Bennett and prepare for extraction." "Ma'am, we should." "That's an order, Sergeant. Go." The 3 men disappeared into the snow. Minutes ticked by. Morrison heard gunfire in the distance, then an explosion. Her radio crackled. "Target destroyed," Foster reported. "Heading back to your position." "Phantom," Morrison transmitted. "Can you confirm enemy reinforcements?" 2 vehicles approaching from the south. You have 12 minutes before they arrive. I'll engage, but you need to move to the extraction point. Sending coordinates. Another data packet. The extraction point was a clearing 2 kilometers west, up a steep hillside. Difficult terrain, but doable. Hayes suddenly looked up from his radio. "Ma'am, I've got signal. Command is reading us." Finally. Morrison grabbed the handset. "Command, this is Omega 6. We have the package. Request immediate helicopter extraction at coordinates I'm sending now. Be advised, we are under heavy contact. 1 Kia, 2 wounded. Copy, Omega-6. Birds are spinning up, ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. The same time Phantom said they had before reinforcements arrived. All elements, we're moving to extraction. Foster, Sullivan, Peterson, rejoin us. We're heading west. The team regrouped and began the grueling climb up the hillside. Bennett could barely walk, and they were carrying Warren's body. Every step was agony in the deep snow. Behind them, Morrison heard the distinctive crack of Phantom's rifle, firing at the approaching Taliban reinforcements. That woman was buying them time with every shot. Phantom, Morrison called over the radio, you need to extract too. Get to the landing zone. Negative. I don't do pickups. Just keep moving, Captain. You're almost clear. Damn it, Phantom, we're not leaving you out here. A pause. Then, almost amused. Captain, I was never here. Now shut up and run. The helicopter, a Chinook with door gunners, appeared over the ridge, descending toward the clearing. The most beautiful sound Morrison had ever heard. The team loaded Warren's body first, then helped Bennett aboard. The wounded climbed in next. Morrison stood at the helicopter's ramp, looking back toward the valley where Phantom was still providing cover fire. She keyed her radio one last time. Phantom, if you're listening, thank you. You saved our lives. If you need anything, ever, contact me. I'm sending you my personal frequency. Silence. Then, Merry Christmas, Captain. Now get out of here. The Chinook lifted off, banking hard away from the valley. Morrison watched the terrain below, trying to spot any sign of their guardian angel. Nothing. Just snow and rock and shadows. Whoever Phantom was, she'd vanished like smoke. 2 days later, at Bagram Airfield, Morrison sat in a secure briefing room with Colonel Patricia Vaughn, Dr. Lawrence Bennett, and several intelligence officers. The room was one of the special compartmented information facilities walls, lined with copper mesh to prevent electronic eavesdropping. Armed guards outside, no windows. Whatever they were about to discuss was classified at the highest levels. Captain Morrison, the colonel began, your report mentions an individual calling herself Phantom who provided sniper support. We need every detail about this contact. Morrison recounted the entire engagement, not leaving out a single detail. The precision shooting, the calm voice over the radio, the impossible shot placement. She described how Phantom had systematically dismantled the ambush, eliminating threats in a sequence that showed not just skill but tactical genius. The timing, the target selection, the way she'd created a corridor for their escape, it all spoke of someone who understood combat at a level beyond normal special operations training. One of the intelligence officers, a man named David Patterson, took notes on a classified laptop. He was CIA, Morrison had learned, part of their Special Activities Division, the kind of person who knew about operations that officially never happened. Patterson leaned forward when she finished. Captain, in your professional assessment, how many targets did this person eliminate? Based on what I observed and what went silent? At least 20, possibly more, and she did it in under 10 minutes. Morrison paused, remembering the methodical way the enemy positions had fallen silent. But it wasn't just the number. It was the precision. I've worked with some of the best snipers in our military. What Phantom did was beyond anything I've seen. She was engaging targets at ranges that should have been impossible in those conditions. Falling snow, wind, limited visibility, none of it seemed to affect her accuracy. Patterson and the colonel exchanged meaningful looks that confirmed what Morrison had suspected. They knew more than they were saying. What? Morrison demanded. Do you know who she is? The colonel sighed. This isn't the first time we've encountered Phantom. Over the last 3 years, there have been 16 documented incidents where American forces under heavy fire received unexpected sniper support from an unknown friendly. The pattern is always the same: long-range precision fire, communications over tactical frequencies, then complete disappearance before extraction. 16 times? Morrison was stunned. And you don't know who it is? We have theories, Patterson said. Some think it's a CIA paramilitary officer operating off the books. Others believe it might be a contractor who went rogue. There's even speculation about foreign special forces conducting unauthorized operations in support of U.S. troops. Or, the colonel interjected, she's someone with so much experience, so much skill, that she's operating at a level beyond conventional special operations. Foster, who'd been allowed into this briefing, asked the obvious question. So why don't we recruit her? If she's that good, we want her on our side officially. "We've tried," Bennett said. "After every incident, we attempt to make contact. We put out messages on frequencies we know she monitors. We leave markers at extraction points. Nothing works. She doesn't want to be found." The colonel pulled up an image older, dated 3 years earlier. It showed a woman in full combat gear, face partially obscured. "This is the only photo we have that might be her, taken in Iraq in 2022. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Hartley, Force Reconnaissance, one of the best snipers in the entire military, confirmed 217 enemy kills." Morrison studied the photo. The woman's eyes were visible, hard, focused, haunted. "What happened to her?" Morrison asked. "Officially, killed in action in Syria in 2022. Her team was overrun. No body was recovered. But unofficially, the colonel said, some of us think she survived, think she's been operating alone ever since, taking on missions no one authorized, helping American forces when she encounters them in trouble." "Why would she do that?" Foster asked. "If she survived, why not come back?" No one had an answer. Morrison looked at the photo again. If that was the woman who'd saved them, she was a ghost in more ways than one, officially dead, operating outside all chains of command, alone in the most dangerous regions of the world. "What do you want from me?" Morrison asked. "We want you to write a full report," the colonel said. "Every detail you can remember. What she said on the radio, how she moved, her tactics, anything that might help us understand her better. And if we do find her, then we bring her home," the colonel said firmly. "No one should be out there alone. Not even a ghost." 15 kilometers from Bagram, in a cave system known only to locals and goat herders, Rebecca Hartley cleaned her rifle by the light of a small chemical heat lamp. The SR-25 had performed flawlessly, as always. 1,600 rounds through the barrel, and it still shot true. She'd lost count of how many days she'd been in Afghanistan this time. 60, 80, time blurred when you lived alone in the mountains, surviving on cash supplies and whatever you could acquire from abandoned Taliban positions. The cave was one of 7 hides Hartley maintained across the province. Each contained food, ammunition, medical supplies, and equipment. Each was carefully camouflaged and booby-trapped against discovery. Each represented months of planning and preparation. This was her life now. Move, hide, watch, wait, identify high-value targets, wait for the perfect moment, strike, disappear, repeat. She'd never intended it to be permanent. After her team was killed in Syria, after she'd fought her way out alone and made it to a safe house, the plan had been to return to base, to rejoin the fight officially. But somewhere during those days, hiding in Syrian villages, watching American forces move through the area, she'd realized something. She could do more good alone. Without the bureaucracy, without the rules of engagement, without the constraints that came with operating as part of a unit, she could take shots no one else would authorize, could hunt targets that official channels wouldn't prioritize, could help in ways that didn't fit on any mission brief. The decision hadn't been easy. For weeks after escaping Syria, she'd wrestled with it. Part of her wanted to go home, to see her parents, to sleep in a real bed, to be part of something official again. But another part, the part shaped by years of combat, by watching good people die because of bureaucratic delays and political considerations, that part knew she could save more lives by staying dead. So she'd made the choice, walked away from her old life completely, used her training to disappear, to become a ghost. She'd cached equipment across multiple countries, established supply networks with sympathetic locals, learned to survive on nothing. She became a phantom in the truest sense, present but invisible, helping without being seen, killing without being caught. So she'd stayed dead. Let them have the memorial service. Let her family grieve and collect the death benefits. She became a ghost because ghosts could go anywhere, do anything, and ghosts could kill the people who needed killing without worrying about rules of engagement or political fallout. The radio, still set to the frequency SEAL Team Omega had been using, crackled with traffic. They were safe at Bagram now, being debriefed, getting medical care. Good. Hartley allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. 16 saves now, counting last night. 16 times she'd encountered American forces in trouble and intervened. 83 enemy fighters eliminated across those engagements. 0 friendly casualties that occurred while she was providing overwatch. It was a good record, but it came at a cost. 3 years without speaking to her parents. 3 years without human contact beyond brief radio transmissions. 3 years of eating alone, sleeping alone, fighting alone. She was 37 years old and felt 60. Her back ached constantly from the positions she held for hours. Her hands had permanent nerve damage from exposure. Her hearing was deteriorating from thousands of shots fired without hearing protection. The isolation was harder than the physical toll. Humans weren't meant to live like this completely alone, without touch, without conversation, without connection. She talked to herself sometimes, carried on full conversations in her head with people who weren't there. She knew it was a symptom of the isolation, knew that her mental health was degrading slowly but steadily. But what choice did she have? Return to civilization and face questions about where she'd been? Risk being discovered and brought back into the system? The moment she stepped back into official channels, she'd lose the freedom to operate. She'd be debriefed, evaluated, probably confined to a desk job or medical discharge. And while she sat in an office pushing paper, Americans would die in the mountains because the sniper who could have saved them was filling out forms. No, this was her path now. She'd walk it until her body failed or her mind broke or an enemy bullet finally found her. It was a lonely way to live, but it was the only way she knew to keep making a difference. She was wearing out. Eventually, her body would fail her at a critical moment, and that would be the end. But until then, she had work to do. Hartley's original target, Rashid Ahmadi, had escaped last night. That bothered her more than she wanted to admit. But the SEAL team had needed help, and saving 8 Americans was worth letting one target escape. She'd find Ahmadi again eventually. Men like that developed patterns. They got comfortable, and when they did, Hartley would be waiting. A noise outside the cave. Hartley's hand moved to her pistol instinctively, but then she recognized the sound, a mountain goat, probably seeking shelter from the cold. She relaxed, then smiled at herself. Even out here, paranoia was a constant companion. Useful paranoia, the kind that kept you alive, but exhausting nonetheless. Hartley pulled out a small photo from her pack, the only personal item she carried. It showed her with her Force Recon team, 5 people grinning at the camera after a successful mission. All dead now except her. Williams, Jackson, Parker, and Martinez. Brothers and sisters in arms. "Merry Christmas, guys," Hartley whispered to the photo. "Saved 8 more of ours last night. Think you'd be proud." The chemical lamp was burning down. Hartley extinguished it and sat in complete darkness, listening to the wind howl outside. Tomorrow she'd move to another hide. Maybe scout the area where Ahmadi was likely to reappear. Maybe just observe and gather intelligence. Or maybe she'd hear another desperate call for help on the radio, and everything would change again. That was the thing about being a ghost. You couldn't plan. You just moved through the world, helping when you could, vanishing when you had to, always alone. Hartley lay back on her sleeping mat and closed her eyes. Sleep came hard these days, filled with dreams of the people she'd killed and the people she'd saved. But it came eventually, as it always did. Outside, the Christmas sun rose over Afghanistan, illuminating mountains that had seen 1,000 years of war and would see 1,000 more. Somewhere in those mountains, a ghost slept and waited. 6 months later, a different valley, a different battle. Army Rangers were pinned down by insurgent fire, taking casualties, running low on ammunition. Their radio operator sent out a desperate call for assistance, not expecting anyone to respond. They were 40 kilometers from the nearest American position, in terrain so hostile that even helicopter support was risky. The ambush had caught them completely by surprise. What was supposed to be a routine patrol had turned into a nightmare when insurgents triggered a complex attack involving mortars, machine guns, and RPGs. 3 Rangers were wounded, 2 critically. They'd been fighting for 90 minutes, and ammunition was running dangerously low. The lieutenant, a young officer named Timothy Bradford, was calculating how much longer they could hold out. 10 minutes? 15? After that, they'd be down to pistols and knives. He was preparing to give the order for a last-stand defense when the impossible happened. Then, a single shot rang out from somewhere in the hills. The insurgent machine gun that had been suppressing them went silent. The Rangers looked at each other in confusion and hope. Their lieutenant grabbed the radio, his hands shaking from adrenaline and desperate hope. "Unknown friendly, identify yourself." A brief pause. Then a voice, scratchy with static but unmistakably calm and professional. "Phantom, stay low. I've got you covered." The Rangers had heard the stories. Most thought they were myths, the ghost sniper who appeared when American forces were in trouble, eliminated threats with impossible precision, then vanished without a trace. Bar stories, people said. Legends made up by soldiers who wanted to believe someone was watching over them. But as precise shots began eliminating enemy positions one by one, they realized the legends were true. Each shot was followed by the silence of another weapon. Bradford watched in awe as his tactical situation transformed from desperate to manageable in the space of 3 minutes. Somewhere in those hills, the ghost was watching over them, and Bradford made a mental note to never doubt a bar story again. And 800 kilometers away, at Bagram Airfield, Captain Sarah Morrison heard about the engagement through unofficial channels. She smiled and raised her coffee cup in a silent toast. She'd been following the rumors since her own encounter. Every few weeks, another story would filter through intelligence channels. A patrol saved from ambush, a convoy protected from an IED attack, a forward operating base that received mysterious sniper support during a Taliban assault. Always the same pattern. Always that calm voice on the radio. Phantom. Morrison had written her report as requested, had documented every detail she could remember, but she'd also included a personal note to Colonel Vaughn, one that wouldn't go in any official file. If you ever do find her, tell her we're grateful. Tell her she's not alone, even if she thinks she is. Tell her we remember. Merry Christmas, Phantom, Morrison said quietly to the empty office. Wherever you are, the ghost in the grass continued her eternal mission, moving through the shadows of mountains and valleys, a solitary guardian who had chosen to remain dead so she could keep others alive. Some heroes wear uniforms and receive medals. Others wear ghillie suits and haunt the